I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Yeah, here we go. Now I'm on. Welcome, welcome, welcome. 870-275-9799 if you want to contribute to the program. Today you can call or text that number. It is, what is today, Joe? Thursday? Is it Thursday? Is it not Wednesday? I guess it is Thursday. It's amazing. And it's also May the 2nd. We have this Saturday is May the 4th be with you, right? And then Sunday, Cinco de Mayo. Oh, really? It's your dog's birthday today. 2 years old. Joe has a border collie. So, well, okay. Well, that's good. I haven't seen Finn in a while. All right, so here's the deal. Guys, I'm just going to be honest with you. I told you, I guess it was at the top of the second hour yesterday. I was just, is the Russia hoax ever going to go away? And the answer is no, it's not. And it is now apparent that they're going to, and the media is right along with them, because they cannot pull off this scheme to continue to confuse the American public. They cannot pull off this scheme without a not only complicit mainstream media, but co-conspirators. The mainstream media are co-conspirators continuing to advance a conspiracy theory that Donald Trump is somehow a Russian agent, because now, yesterday was a disgrace. Yesterday they're now going after William Barr, you know, who is not some. This is a guy who served as the AG for H.W. Bush, okay? But he's actually very much a guy who's by the book. And everyone is now saying, you know, you heard how many Democrats, you lied to Congress when you said that Barr or that Mueller didn't disagree with your conclusion. But now we have this letter, smoking gun letter. A couple of things. Barr was never able to get his answer out because they kept interrupting him, number one. But number two, if you would listen to what Barr was saying, he was saying the conclusion that I was talking about that Mueller didn't disagree with was the no collusion, and that this was, and if you really if you expand on it, the letter was very short. Barr thinks it was written by someone on Mueller's staff, one of these 18, 17 angry Democrats, and then it's Mueller that calls Barr later and says, well, I don't disagree with your letter. I don't disagree with it, but I'm afraid the media is, taking it and running with it. And I think it had to do with the obstruction findings. Folks, they spent all day yesterday arguing over a summary and how it was written when they have a 400-page report right in front of them that says that the president did not commit a crime, and then there's the whole obstruction, which obviously Attorney General William Barr, there's not enough evidence of obstruction, not to mention there's not a crime. So he's obstructing a process when there is no crime that they can prove in the first place. Anyway, it's all kabuki theater. Yesterday was kabuki theater. And I got to tell you, I couldn't believe what Kamala Extract Harris said about Rod Rosenstein. And William Barr said, I think this is a little bit of a flip-flop. Basically he's trying to say, I thought Rod Rosenstein was your guy. This is probably the most outrageous thing to me. I know everyone heard the, Hirono from Hawaii, and she was really, everyone's heard that audio clip, ad nauseum. But if you can you cue this up, Joe? This is Kamala Harris. It's a watch. Did Rod Rosenstein listen to this questioning of Bill Barr by Kamala Extract Harris yesterday? This is very frustrating. Anyway, go ahead.
Earlier today, in response to Senator Graham, you said, quote, that you consulted with Rosenstein constantly, unquote,
that should
with
be a good
respect
thing.
to the special counsel's investigation and report.
That should be a good thing.
But Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein is also a key witness in the firing of FBI Director Comey. Did you consult with I'm not finished.
Yeah.
Did you consult with DOJ ethics officials before you enlisted Rod Rosenstein to participate in a charging decision for an investigation, the subject of which he is also a witness?
My understanding was that he had been cleared already to participate in it by the.
So you had consulted with them and they cleared it?
No, I think they cleared it when he took over the investigation.
Did you
That's my
consult?
understanding.
You don't know whether he's been cleared of a
No,
conflict of interest?
he just said it was his understanding.
So you're saying that it did not need to be reviewed by the career ethics officials in your office?
No, that's not what he's
I believe
saying.
it was.
Are you deaf and stupid?
I believe it was reviewed, and I
And what
would
was the
also point
finding?
out this seems to be a bit of a flip-flop because when the president's
Sir,
supporters were challenging
flip-flop, I think, in this
Rosenstein-
case, is that you're not answering the question directly.
No, you're
Did the
flip-flopping
ethics
because the whole
officials
party loved
in
Rosenstein.
your office, in the Department of Justice, review the appropriateness of Rod Rosenstein being a part of making a charging decision on an investigation which he is also a witness in?
Yeah, so as I said, my understanding was he had been cleared, and he had been cleared before I arrived.
In making a decision on the Mueller report?
Yes.
And the findings of whether or not the case would be charged on obstruction of justice? He had been cleared on that?
He was the acting attorney general on the Mueller investigation.
Exactly.
Had he been cleared
He had been.
to make
I am.
by
You
your
just-
side?
he's-
I
how
am
many times do you have to
informed- I am
answer,
informed
Kamala?
that before I arrived, he had been cleared by the ethics officials,
Of what?
serving as acting attorney general on the Mueller case.
How about making a charging decision on obstruction of justice?
That is
the
what the
underlying
acting-
offenses, which include him as a witness.
You know, that's what the acting attorney general's job is.
To be a witness and to make the decision about being a prosecutor?
Well, no, but to make charging decisions.
Stop.
I have
All right.
nothing else. My time is right.
That's Kamala Extract Harris, who was high on Kamala Extract, apparently. And I tell you something. I can't believe this. This actually really kind of made me fly off the handle when I saw this, because Rod Rosenstein was the guy that was supposed to ensure the integrity of the Mueller investigation. When Jeff Sessions recused, when they demanded that former Attorney General Jeff Sessions recuse, they said it has to go with Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein. He is the guy. He is, and really what it meant at the time, guys like me on the right were saying, man, this guy Rosenstein's bad news. He's a deep state actor, and he may still very well may be, but the bottom line is, there's some people that think that there's so much stuff on Rosenstein. Maybe that's what Kamala Extract Harris is talking about. But you know what? I'm sorry. You can't eat your cake and have it, and that's what Kamala Extract and now all the Democrats are trying to do, right? They're trying to eat their cake and have it at the same time, and you can't do that. Well, you can if you have a media that is complicit and wants to actively deceive their listeners and viewers, and that is what we're seeing. The Democrats are continuing to advance what is now a conspiracy theory, folks. And I use that in the term of, I don't like to use that in a derogatory term because there are so many, a lot of times that's a way to easily write off what is true out there. But in this case, it's getting ridiculous. And maybe they want to ride this to the 2020 elections. They want to keep this alive. They got to keep Mueller, this idea that Donald Trump is a KGB agent or something. Maybe they think it's going to play well. I don't know. That maybe they hope to confuse the American public to where they really don't know one way or the other. Maybe that's what it is, just to try to muddy the water. But the fact of the matter is, when Kamala Extract Harris is questioning whether or not Rod Rosenstein is now credible to make these decisions, the only reason you do that is because you know that Rod Rosenstein agreeing with William Barr gives Barr's findings more credibility, because the Democrats were all on Team Rosenstein. Is it Rosenstein? Rod Rosenstein. Rod Rosenstein. Anyway, they were all on Rod's side. They were all Team Rod. This guy is who we need to be. That's incredible. What a huge flip-flop. Absolutely huge flip-flop. Now, if you don't believe me that the mainstream media is in on all of this, which, of course, all of you out there believe me when it comes to that point, one of the most disgraceful, I mean, this is going even further. This is how desperate the left is. And when I say the left, I mean the Democrats and the media, because they're the same thing. The mainstream media are the essential, the public relations firm for the Democrats. They are puppets for the Democrats. They are Democrats. Breitbart.com, MSNBC's Brian Williams, who is a known liar, a proven liar. That's why he's no longer the anchor at NBC. He got fired or put in, put back in the on-deck circle, and they brought him back, resurrected him on MSNBC like no one was going to notice. MSNBC's Brian Williams pushes conspiracy theory. Not correct that Mueller found no collusion. Now, you got to remember, what have we heard for the last 2 years? Russia-Trump collusion, the Trump campaign and Russia collusion, and the ongoing investigation by Robert Mueller into whether or not the Trump campaign colluded with the Russians. That's all we have heard for the last 2 years. Here's Senator Lindsey Graham, the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Listen.
No conspiracy between the Trump campaign and the Russian government regarding the 2016 election. As to obstruction of justice, Mr. Mueller left it to Mr. Barr to decide after 2 years and all this time. He said, Mr. Barr, you decide. Mr. Barr did. There are a bunch of lawyers on this committee, and I will tell you the following. You have to have specific intent to obstruct justice. If there's no underlying crime...
We're reluctant to do this. We rarely do. But the chairman of the Judiciary Committee just said that Mueller found there was no collusion. That is not correct. Nicole Wallace, the report says collusion is not a thing they considered. It doesn't exist in federal code.
And what's stunning is that Lindsey Graham is offering answers to questions that aren't on the table today. The question on the table today, after the reporting last night, is why did Barr mischaracterize what was actually in the Mueller report? And I'm sorry, Lindsey Graham, but your defensiveness is showing. To talk about everything that went into it and in the next breath distort it is a stunning mischaracterization of what the whole exercise is supposed to be about. Reveals what I talked about before, that he is sitting there today not as the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, but as a human shield for Donald Trump, and it would appear William Barr.
Again, we try to offer just gavel-to-gavel coverage, but that phrase, or the lack of it, its absence from federal code, this no collusion mantra, is so foundational to why we're here today that we decided to flag it when we heard him use it yet again. Back into the chairman and the committee room.
Okay, stop. To make sure. All right, so if you needed any other evidence that the mainstream media are a bunch of hypocrites whose moral outrage is on some sort of rotating spindle where they get to pick what their moral standards are from day to day based on what they want the outcome to be. Sometimes that sounds kind of familiar locally, doesn't it? But you get the point. That is, I mean, they spent the last 2 years using the word collusion, and now they point out, well, to say that the first half of the report, it doesn't find any collusion, well, that's not technically a crime. Well, tell me, is it a crime like extremely careless to your gross negligence? Is it anything like that? Remember that with Hillary Clinton? And by the way, speaking of extra investigations, there was one question that was asked of William Barr. I believe, by Chuck Grassley as to whether or not there are ongoing investigations right now into what happened with the DOJ and everything else, the spying on the Trump campaign. And that was an interesting answer. We'll have that for you. Coming up at 7:33, so about an hour from now, a little over an hour from now, we'll be talking with State Representative Nelda Speaks will be on the program. It's always great to have her on. We'll be doing her impression of the session, or she'll be giving us her impression of the session 2019. And then, of course, tomorrow on the program, State Representative John Payton will be here. He'll be doing his impression of the session. So, anyway, it's always great to have that. And we may have another guest for you Friday as well. But, I mean, it's still in development, and I'll tell you about it as soon as I have that confirmed. The telephone number, 870-275-9799. What do you think? Seriously, they were arguing, now they're saying they've got to go after Barr. And I'll close with this, and we'll continue with this thought. But the reason they're now asking for Barr to resign, the reason there was a deep state leak, they leaked this letter. We know that the letter to make Barr look bad, to make him look like a hypocrite, they leaked the letter. It wasn't even, according to Barr, it probably wasn't even Mueller that wrote the letter. It was a staffer, an angry Democrat. Now they leak it. Why do they do this? Because they have to attack Barr. They have to go after Barr. They have to make him seem less credible so that when William Barr goes out to a podium and has a press conference and announces that the Office of Inspector General has referred crimes and has referred James Comey in a criminal referral and Andrew McCabe in a criminal referral, the mainstream media now gets to say, oh, well, he's not credible. This is now a banana republic, and Donald Trump is using the government to go after his enemies, which is the exact thing that Hillary, Obama, and the Department of Justice, the higher-ups, did to Donald Trump. Used the government to go after political enemies. They will project the very thing they're guilty of, and the media will be co-conspirators as far as I'm concerned. Something must be done. The truth must be known, and we'll continue bringing it to you. This is Conduit News Radio. Back in just a moment.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Folks, welcome back. Welcome back to the program. We got the president of the Family Council on the line, Jerry Cox. Jerry, how are you this morning, sir?
Well, I'm doing really good. How are you this morning?
I'm doing fantastic.
Good. You sound like it. You sound like you're doing great.
Talking a little, C.S. Lewis, Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. You can never go wrong with that.
Absolutely, yeah.
So let's just kind of start generally. Jerry Cox, president of the Family Council. What was your impression of the session 2019, sir?
Well, I'll start with the good. The good is that I believe we could have passed just about any pro-life, anti-abortion type legislation that we would have wanted to pass. And in fact, when I look at the list, altogether, the legislature passed about...
This is for all you big government establishment Republicans out there. Hope you're listening. I keep a close watch on these votes of mine. I keep my finger in the wind all the time. I vote big government, and you will pay with your dime. 'Cause every time I toe the line. You know, there's always an excuse not to shrink government. It's much easier just to toe that line. I find it very easy to be rhino blue. I find I'm not alone when failing to come through. Yes, big government, I'm a fool for you. 'Cause every time I toe that line. Legislative sleight of hand would be an accurate description. Or you could just say, they can't quit towing that party line. As sure as night is dark and day is light, I'll vote big government, both day and night, and act like I'm shocked when it all comes to light. 'Cause every time I toe the line, you know, the phrase toe the line is the equivalent of toe the mark, both of which mean to conform to a rule or standard. You could also call it the status quo. Tax and spend, I'm always on your side. I love writing government checks that I cannot hide. Buying people's votes always turns the tide, 'cause every time I toe the line. The Oxford Dictionary Word Histories. The idiom toe the line, from an athletics analogy, originated in the early 19th century. I hope you don't watch these votes of mine. Hope you don't see through the lies and slime. 'Cause I plan on spending with your dime. 'Cause every time I toe the line. You know, toeing the line is what the folks down in Little Rock call progress.
PHP Parody. Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
So Ryan Saavedra over at the Daily Wire, or he's the reporter for the Daily Wire, his Twitter, he's pointing out that the bias at C-SPAN is bad. Mainstream media bad. You know, C-SPAN had a lot of the coverage yesterday of that hearing. He writes, on C-SPAN's Twitter account, they have only posted the full exchanges that Democrats on the Senate Judiciary Committee had with Bill Barr. There are no full exchanges with Republican members. Now, this was as of 2:45 yesterday. Total time promoting, Democrats 38 minutes and 38 seconds in individual clips, Republicans 1 minute and 30 seconds. So they don't want the Republicans to be heard here. And maybe it's because they believe that this letter is somehow a smoking gun. Again, that was leaked the day before, or the morning, I guess, the night before Barr scheduled to testify. The letter is leaked. Then the next day, James Comey gets an op-ed in the New York Times. Folks, this is now it's more out in the open. You know what I mean? It's more shame. They literally are cornered, in my opinion, and their only hope is to use the media, and that's why I'm glad I'm in the media, in the alternative media. Their only hope is to use the media to confuse the American public enough to where they think, well, you know what? They're all corrupt. It doesn't matter. I mean, that's what they're trying to do here. When President Trump declassifies the FISA docs, okay, when Michael Horowitz from the Office of Inspector General releases, I think he's got some report that's supposed to be out next week, and then he's got another one that's supposed to be out 4 weeks after that. If there are criminal referrals, which most people think there will be, the Democrats know what's about to happen to former Obama Department of Justice officials. So they have to muddy the water to make everybody look corrupt. They definitely don't want Trump coming out looking like he was a victim. The fact of the matter is he was a victim of our own intelligence agencies for political purposes, weaponizing them against somebody they don't like. Now, the question you got to ask yourself is why? Does this go beyond typical politics? If Donald Trump was, say, Jeb Bush, would this have happened? If Donald Trump was Jeb Bush, would this have happened? You and I both know the answer is no. So what about Donald Trump? What is it, his policies? Is it his America First philosophy that they can't handle? His anti-globalist philosophy that they can't handle? That is a great question. 870-275-9799. Back in just a minute.
13 laws to protect the sanctity of human life, most of which restrict abortions. For example, one requires a 72-hour waiting period before a woman can get an abortion after she makes her initial doctor visit. That extends the waiting period. Another requires doctors who do abortions to be obstetrician gynecologists. You can't just have a dermatologist out here doing abortions.
Right.
And then there's another really good bill that prevents abortions after the 18th week of pregnancy. That dials it back, more than it's been dialed back before. Now, the bad guys, Planned Parenthood, ACLU, have all said they're going to challenge these laws. But I have to believe that of the dozen or more laws that were passed, some are going to stand. And if all the laws that were passed this legislative session were to go into effect, we would see a reduction in abortions in Arkansas of about 500 to 700 per year from now on.
Wow.
And that's a good thing, because we're here to protect the sanctity of human life and to protect the health and welfare of women. And as we all know, abortion just destroys both. It destroys human life, and it destroys the health and welfare of women as well. So we just believe there are better ways. Adoption, agencies out here to help women with unplanned pregnancies, there are better ways. And these laws steer people in that direction. So that's the good. That's the good.
Well, let's talk about, you mentioned the trigger law too, right? I thought that one was really important, especially if the Supreme Court tilts even more to the right and to the pro-life side. If they ever overturn Roe versus Wade, then Arkansas, our laws against abortion will then go into effect.
Sure. What we were able to do is help our good friend, Senator Jason Rapert, with the passage of a law that essentially it says if the courts dial back Roe versus Wade and the other abortion decisions that have legalized abortion, if they dial those back, then to whatever extent they dial that back, then abortion will be illegal in Arkansas. And so we're making that decision ahead of time, because a lot of people think that if Roe is reversed, that suddenly abortion will be illegal throughout the whole country. And that's not true. All that would do is kick it back to the states, and every state would make their own abortion laws the way they did prior to the passage of Roe v. Wade. And so abortion was generally illegal in Arkansas prior to Roe v. Wade, and this would put it back the way it was. And so that's a...
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, so yesterday again in Congress, they were arguing over a summary letter. They were grilling Bill Barr, and they're doing all of this when there's a 400-page report that has all the detail that they would need, that shows that there was that they spent 2 years. They had all these witnesses, $30 million, 17, attorneys working under Mueller, and they don't find the collusion with the Russians. Matter of fact, it finds that there's not one American that willingly colluded with the Russians. Yet we have to hear over and over again about a Trump Tower meeting, right, where they agreed to. By the way, this is all an attempt to manipulate the American people who don't know about politics, who don't know about opposition research, who don't, they're essentially wanting to make potential opposition research illegal. And that's insane. And every one of the Democrats knows it's insane, but they don't care because they hate President Trump personally. And they know the hammer's about to come down, and now they have to attack Bill Barr. They got to attack his credibility because they don't want what's about to happen to happen. And, maybe we're all wrong. Now, personally, I was talking to somebody about the FISA D class that's coming. You can go to conduitnews.com. You can look up Devin Nunes, the interview that I did with Devin Nunes, when he was in Arkansas, and we thought the FISA D class was coming last year. But I think what happened was they didn't want any more. The Russia investigation was an attempt to get Trump to obstruct justice, like actually obstruct justice by either firing Rosenstein or firing Mueller and that sort of thing. And so now everybody's talking about, well, it says that Trump instructed his lawyer to fire Bob Mueller. Well, did his lawyer fire Bob Mueller? Now, by the way, President Trump denies that he told Don McGahn that. Listen to this exchange with Sidney Blue Menthol. Blue Menthol. It's a new brand of cigarette. A lot of people don't know about it. Attorney General William Barr and Sidney Blue Menthol. Listen.
To you is about your characterization of the report, correct?
Well, the letter speaks for itself.
It does. And in fact, in response to your question,
I don't think it's Sidney.
Why not just pick up the phone? This letter was an extraordinary act. A career prosecutor rebuking the Attorney General of the United States, memorializing in writing, right?
Richard.
I know of no other.
Not Sidney. That's the Clinton guy.
Do you?
Richard Blumenthal.
I don't consider Bob at this stage a career prosecutor. He's had a career as a prosecutor.
Well, he's a very eminent
prosecutor. He was the head of the FBI for 12 years.
He's a career.
He's had a
law enforcement professional.
Right.
Yep. I know of no other instance of.
But he was also a political appointee, and he was a political appointee with me at the Department of Justice. The letter's a bit snitty, and I think it was probably written by one of his staff people.
Did you make a memorandum of your conversation?
Huh?
Did you make a memorandum?
No, I didn't.
Or did anyone else?
I love this part.
Did anyone, either you or anyone on your staff, memorialize your conversation with Robert Mueller?
Yes.
Who did that?
There were notes taken of the call.
May we have those notes?
No.
Why not?
Why should you have them?
Did you have a problem with the way Comey handled?
Love that part. By the way, speaking of Lindsey Graham, he dropped the F-bomb. He opened the hearing by reading. He read tweets between Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, and it was genius because he did it specifically to let everybody in the committee room know. And I thought this was very powerful. The reason they were there yesterday, period. The reason they were in that room questioning William Barr, the Attorney General of the United States, is because Peter Strzok and Lisa Page had an insurance policy that they talked about, that the Department of Justice actually had. That's the only reason they were there. Matter of fact, you can say the same thing. Why did Paul Manafort get charged and convicted? Well, because the Department of Justice had an insurance policy that started, and you can go further into further, but it started with the insurance policy, and then when James Comey was fired, he illegally leaked classified documents to a professor that then leaked it to the Washington Post or New York Times, I can't remember. And that's what, we got to have a special counsel. Got to have a special counsel. And then Rod Rosenstein is like, I'm in charge now. Sessions recused. Here's the evidence to start the investigation. And I think I saw a report about this. I can't remember if it was, I'm going to say it was a report just because it's in there. That what Rod Rosenstein handed Mueller to start the investigation was the Steele dossier. And if that's the case, then you had nothing. You had nothing the whole time. Go to this tweet here. This is a tweet from some guy named Army Girl, Jamie Army Girl. Here is some girl named, not some guy. Listen to what Lindsey Graham said, about a 13-second clip, right after the hearings concluded yesterday. Listen to this.
Why not call for Mueller to testify?
Because I'm not going to do any more
enough already. It's over. If there's any dispute about a conversation, then he'll come. But I'm not going to retry the case. I'm not calling McCann. It is over.
Why not
exactly
call for Mueller
right.
to testify?
That's driving people nuts. I had text messages from politicos yesterday saying, where is this Lindsey Graham been this whole time? I have a theory on that. We won't go into it. Here is the current news today. The current news today, and this is, they got everybody saying William Barr. This is another example. They have made the House Judiciary Chairman, Gerald Nadler. They have made the process so complicated because they want staff attorneys to question after the members get to question. Which I saw somebody say, if that's the case, then they need to go ahead and William Barr just needs to have his staff answer the staff attorney's question when that time comes. But they've made it, so difficult for William Barr to testify here, so he's decided he's not going to testify, which is, done intentionally so that they can continue this conspiracy theory that Donald Trump is a KGB agent. Here's the statement about why Attorney General Barr will not be testifying today at the House committee. After yesterday, can you blame him? Attorney General Barr not appearing before the House Judiciary Committee tomorrow. Today, the Attorney General testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee for over 5 hours. The Attorney General also voluntarily released the special counsel's confidential report with minimal redactions to Congress and the public, made an even less redacted report available to Chairman Nadler and congressional leadership, which they have refused to review. Which, that right there just shows you how they don't really care about getting to the facts and the meat of the report. They only care about getting Donald Trump. They have refused to review, and he's made himself available to the committee by volunteering to testify this week. Unfortunately, even after the Attorney General volunteered to testify, Chairman Nadler placed conditions on the House Judiciary Committee hearing that are unprecedented and unnecessary. Congress and the executive branch are co-equal branches of government, and each have a constitutional obligation to respect and accommodate one another's legitimate interests. Chairman Nadler's insistence of having staff question the Attorney General, a Senate-confirmed cabinet member, is inappropriate. Further, in light of the fact that the majority of the House Judiciary Committee, including Chairman Nadler, are themselves attorneys, and the chairman has the ability and authority to fashion the hearing in a way that allows for efficient and thorough questioning by the members themselves, the chairman's request is also unnecessary. The Attorney General remains happy to engage directly with members on their questions regarding the report and looks forward to continue working with the committee on their oversight requests. That's the department, or that's a statement from the Department of Justice on why he will not be testifying today. So I'm just all of this to say, I think my gut feeling is those of you who are everybody's going to start getting excited about the 2020 elections. And this is what we have to look forward to. This is but a taste of what we have to look forward to in the campaign. Will the House resist the urge to have a vote on impeachment? That's the other thing here. I predict they will, and they'll just use all of this innuendo and this faux outrage to continue to confuse the American people and get most Americans to think, well, everybody's corrupt. Both sides are corrupt. So what difference does it make? At this point, what difference does it make? And I think that's where we are. By the way, it's Richard. I said Sidney Blumenthal. It's Richard Blumenthal. So my apologies there. Sidney Blumenthal isn't he he's a Clinton guy and kind of like was a spook or, sort of a spook, maybe not, in terms of CIA connections and that sort of thing. 870-275-9799. Definitely a guy with, intelligence community, Sidney Blumenthal. Let's see. So now they're saying these are our Facebook page. You can watch us over at facebook.com/Conduit News. Nadler is now going to try to force Barr to come testify or subpoena him and that sort of thing. Gene writing, the Attorney General is not under investigation. Paul on Facebook, Democrats are crashing and burning. That's the way I see it, but the question is, do the American, or are the vast majority of the American people going to see it that way? I don't know. Remains to be seen. Obviously, the 2016 elections were an example of where the media was not as powerful as they thought. Their polls were wrong. They were wrong, and they had no self-reflection. They had no moment of self-reflection because they have such an agenda, right? But you can make a strong argument that the reason that the House of Representatives is now controlled by the Democrats is because you can make an argument that there was enough Americans who were deceived by the media and they thought that Donald Trump was loyal to Saudi Arabia, a KGB agent, had colluded with the Russians. I mean, just go down the list. There's still people that think that he approves of white nationalism and the KKK after the Charlottesville thing. That's a hoax that even Jake Tapper on CNN was forced to admit wasn't the truth. He never said that. Never said, when he said fine people, he wasn't referring to white supremacists. He was referring to people like you and me who don't think that we should be editing history by removing Confederate monuments. Anyway, so it remains to be seen, and we will have to wait until 2020 to find out if that was just a one-off thing. Was it just a flash in the pan? Or is the mainstream media actually more irrelevant now and in 2020 than they were in 2016? Remains to be seen. We don't know. We just don't know. I'll tell you this much. President Trump's still packing out venues when he goes and has his rallies. And, I mean, did anybody see the Joe Biden first campaign speech, aside from the fact that he was slurring his words and you couldn't really understand what he was saying? There was, I mean, it was a small room, and there were people there, but it was small. President Trump said last night on Fox Business, he said last night that if Joe Biden would be an easy candidate to defeat, and that if it is Joe, it's going to make 2016 that 2020 will make will be nothing compared in terms of it'll be easier. But 2020 will just be that Biden is an easier candidate to beat than even Hillary was. And that's a statement. That's saying something. That's a bold claim, because Hillary Clinton is the worst political candidate in American history, I think, by far. Tell me what you think. We're going to take a break. 870-275-9799. I want to remind you guys, you can support Conduit News Radio if you go to Patreon. Go to patreon.com/CNR for $5 a month and get access to the bonus weekly video. We're going to take a break. Back in a moment.
Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Really good law that is very forward-thinking, and we really applaud Senator Rapert for doing that, and we were glad to help him get that passed.
We're talking with Jerry Cox. He's the president of the Family Council. This is his 2019 impression of the session. So, Jerry, you said I'll start with the good. So does that mean there is a bad?
Well, you know, you consider what could have been with overwhelming Republican majorities all over the Capitol, with people that will all tell you how, you know, that they're Christian and they're conservative and all these things. And yet we didn't see a bathroom bill filed this session that would protect the safety and welfare of women and girls when they walk into a bathroom or walk into a changing facility somewhere at a public pool or other, types of situations. We didn't see any legislation whatsoever to protect their privacy.
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Eight 870-275-9799. Call or text. All right. We forgot this one, okay? By the way, white elephant in the room, Legisplain, is all about the fact that the 92nd General Assembly, because they met, because they assembled, because they legislated, and now they're out legislating. By the way, what's interesting about that is, if you'll notice, many of these legislators, one of the key ways they legisplain is by disseminating the exact same messaging, word for word, that somebody else has written for them, like a party official, and they post the same thing all over Facebook. Have you noticed this? That's one of the key ways they're legisplating right now, because they are afraid. I honestly think they're afraid you're going to find out that because they met, because they legislated, you will now be paying more money to the government as a whole than you are now, than you did before they met and legislated, is what I should say. So before they met for the 92nd General Assembly, you were paying X. After they met, now you're going to pay Y, and Y is greater than X in this case, significantly so. And stay tuned to Conduit News. We'll tell you all about it. But that's the white elephant in the room, the elephant being the mascot of the Republican Party. So anyway, now you're going to hear the legisplaining, which is what a legislator does when he's trying to, no, you just don't understand. I know, let me tell you, I know you may think that you're paying more taxes, but you're not. You don't need to listen to them. If you understand the legislation, you got to let me explain it to you. I'm going to have to do some legisplaining. And once that happens, very much like mansplaining. I think Beto O'Rourke mansplains, doesn't he? With his, Robert Francis. Yeah, for sure. Robert Francis. All right, so check it out. Here's the last clip. We had this to me is why they have to discredit William Barr. They have to go after William Barr because of what Senator Chuck Grassley asked William Barr. Listen to this.
Pull up. Okay. There have been a number of leaks coming out of the Justice Department and FBI during high-profile investigations. The Inspector General found that during the department's investigation of Hillary Clinton for mishandling highly classified information, there was a culture of unauthorized media contacts. During the Russian investigation, the leaks continued. Leaks undermine the ability of investigators to investigate. Further leaks to the papers while Congress's questions to the department go unanswered is unacceptable. Why? What are you doing to investigate unauthorized media contacts by the department and FBI officials during the Russian investigation?
We have multiple criminal leak investigations underway.
Well, that's a little inconvenient. So they got multiple leak investigations. I wonder if they're investigating who leaked this letter. Or who knows? You never know. Maybe they leaked the letter intentionally, or they to try to catch somebody. You never know that. A lot of people think. Remember the BuzzFeed story where they said that they had proof. The BuzzFeed, it was a bombshell report, and Robert Mueller came out. That was when you first knew, wasn't it? Remember that? That was when we first knew that Robert Mueller may not have found anything on collusion. The BuzzFeed story said that Trump had told Cohen to lie to Congress, which actually didn't make any logical sense if you knew, I believe, what Don Jr. had said. But Trump told Cohen to lie to Congress, and they had proof, and it was this huge story. BuzzFeed ran with it. It blew up, and then Robert Mueller came out and said, no, that story is not accurate. Wasn't that kind of the first little notification that, if they would have had anything on Trump, you would have found out well before the 2018 election, midterm election, well before. This is the most vetted president in the history of the United States. The most investigated president in the history of the United States, because the deep state doesn't like him, because they don't like his views differ from a establishment Republican. Or, there are ways an establishment Republican and an establishment Democrat are exactly alike, and foreign policy is certainly one of those things. And I just think there are people that don't like that, among other things. But that was really the first one, wasn't it? A lot of people think whoever leaked that story to BuzzFeed, that the Justice Department, that it was a sting operation, if you will, that they were trying to catch a leaker, and they did. They did catch a leaker. We don't know who it is yet, but you just heard William Barr. There are multiple investigations. There's also the Office of Inspector General that's going to be investigating James Comey. And you're telling me it's just one grand coincidence that the letter leaks the day of his testimony, William Barr, and the next day James Comey has an op-ed in the New York Times? The media, at this point, and Donald Trump, I want to remind you, was not the first to say this. The late Pat Caddell, who didn't he pass away recently? Joe, look up if Pat Caddell, C-A-D, Pat Caddell, if he recently passed away. I think he did. The pollster for Jimmy Carter. I don't want to attribute somebody's dead if they're not dead, but I'm pretty sure Pat Caddell died. He said in 2012, the Benghazi story had just broke. We realized that Susan Rice had lied to the American people, that Obama had lied to the American people. We also were realizing that the video that they blamed the attacks on was actually a video in a glass case. Essentially, they had, that's him. Is he dead? February 16th. Yeah, so he passed away this past February. So Pat Caddell did die. So the late Pat Caddell. And we were essentially finding out that the Benghazi tape was essentially a tape in a glass case. What I mean by that is the administration had set this up. They had this kind of like in storage, ready to use, ready to blame. But basically, in case of emergency, we can blame this video, promote this video, and therein lies a Silicon Valley question, by the way, too. But we found that it was all a lie, and the media did nothing about it. We were in the height of a presidential election between Mitt Romney and Barack Obama, And the late Pat Cadell was the first person I ever heard say on national television on Fox News. He said, the media are the enemy of the American people. That's Jimmy Carter's pollster. He said this well before President Trump ever did. But if they're actively deceiving you and they don't have your best interest at heart, yeah, they're the enemy.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
We didn't see any legislation go anywhere regarding conscience protection for healthcare workers. For example, there's great pressure on people in the medical professions now to be a part of gender reassignment surgeries on children and a lot of just crazy stuff like that that the LGBTQ community is promoting and trying to coerce doctors and healthcare workers from being a part of some things that are just wrong. And we didn't see any legislation go forward that would protect that. We didn't see any legislation go forward that would protect faith-based adoption and foster care agencies who have been in the adoption and foster care business forever, you know, your Catholic agencies, your Protestant agencies out here. But because of their doctrinal stand, their faith, they don't want to place adoptive or foster care kids with same-sex couples. And so in other states, these agencies are being run out of business because the state will take away their license if they don't compromise their faith and put kids where they believe they shouldn't be. And so we wanted to see that protected here in Arkansas. Again, didn't go anywhere. And so there's a problem with that. School choice. Legislature is very pro-homeschool, but at the same time, nothing meaningful went forward in the area of giving low-income parents a really good alternative to just continue to send their kid to a failing school. We tried to get a law passed that would give people a break on that silly used car sales tax that Bill Clinton got passed back in 1991. And the Department of Finance administration said, oh, no, can't afford it. A senator said, oh, it'll break the budget. Well, that would have given the lowest income people a little break on paying sales tax on an old used car that's probably been taxed half a dozen times already. It would have raised the threshold from where it is now, which I think is around $4,000 or $4,500, up to about $7,500. Legislature wouldn't go for that, and so I think what we have really is an opportunity for the legislature and the governor to do great things, and I'm watching mediocrity in some areas that should be no-brainers for people who hold the credentials that our lawmakers hold as being Christian, conservative, Republican, and so forth. And so that part of it I find very disappointing, and I know they can do better. It's just that they haven't done so.
Again, we're talking with Jerry Cox. He's the president of the Family Council. Yeah, you know, it was interesting. You mentioned that there wasn't a bathroom bill filed. There was talk of one 2 years ago that wasn't brought forth. And I guess the issue is I know these would be controversial. I know, for example, you would have the mainstream media in Arkansas. They would take the liberal line, this idea that you're somehow trying to oppress LGBTQ or trans community or whatnot. But, you know, in terms of the culture battles that are going on right now, some of this stuff may not be as prevalent in Arkansas. I know it is here, though. It may not be as prevalent in Arkansas as California or New York or something like that. But we do know what the trend is. We do know what other states are doing. And so it would make sense that we would take action now and go ahead and take the media scrutiny and try to be what's called left of bang before it's a giant issue, so that we are prepared when, you know, these giant culture changes the left is trying to make against the traditional family, against the idea that you're a biological male and a biological woman. You would think it would be a no-brainer for the Republican legislature to tackle these issues.
Well, one would think so, but the leadership just hasn't been there. And I'm watching leadership fade on these kinds of issues, where back a few years ago, we elected a crop of lawmakers who would they'd go in there and they'd rip their shirt off and jump in the fight and say, put me in, Coach. I want to be a champion on these things, to largely a number of people that keep their heads down, don't want to rock the boat, just keep everything kind of rolling along, keep the status quo, and unfortunately kick the can down the road on important legislation that one day there will be a crying need for legislation to keep men out of the women's bathroom.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
I didn't really plan this specifically, at least not 3 days in a row. I mean, I planned my segments ahead of time, but not 3 days in a row. Welcome back to the program. This is hour number 2. You have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, where we are building the Liberty Machine. We're excited about what's happening coming up at 7:33. We're going to be talking to the happiest warrior in all of the state legislature. Her name, State Representative Nelda Speaks. She's from Baxter County, and we can't wait to hear her voice here in just a little bit. We're going to be getting her impression of the session 2019. You want to stay tuned for that. So 2 days ago, I talked about China, and I talked about how China is really, really terrible when it comes to religious liberty violations. They're like number one on the list, and I juxtaposed that, compared that with why are we giving them, or wanting to give them, why is our Arkansas's leadership wanting to give China our taxpayer money to try to recruit these companies that are not really companies. They're Chinese embassies. They're loyal to the Communist Chinese government. In light of, how terrible they are on religious liberty, in light of what they're doing with intellectual property, in light of the trade war and everything else, right? Why are they even still pursuing these things? Then yesterday, I talked about, and these are short summaries. Yesterday, I talked about Joe Biden in China and Peter Schweitzer's book that is essentially highlighting the fact that the Chinese government are paying American politicians' family members, making them uber wealthy. I mean, to the tune of $1 billion deals. We haven't even talked about what happened with the Bidens in Ukraine, but we do know that Joe Biden's son, Beau Biden, was given with him and Teresa Heinz Kerry's son. They were given all this money, backing by the Chinese and everything else. And it's even more insidious than that. You could have the Chinese, let's say, come to America and open up a bank or buy a bank, okay? Then that bank can just hire the children of American politicians. And there's nothing illegal about it at all, right? So I know it's pretty ridiculous. So China. So we talked about that yesterday, and we asked, who else is, if the Chinese are willing to bribe, essentially, through a loophole, bribe American politicians as high as the Vice President of the United States, or the former Vice President of the United States, Joe Biden, then who else are the Chinese out there ready to bribe? Now, think about this. For some, we have Ukraine, which is right next to Russia. Ukraine was doing this, essentially, too. What if it were Russia that was doing it? Oh, my goodness, it's Russia. Russia's bribing American politicians through loopholes. Huge outrage. China? No, for some reason, China is fine. The media loves China. Maybe that's because the media loves communism. Just an idea. Maybe it's because the mainstream media despises freedom. So anyway, I talked about China the last 2 days, okay? And Joe Biden has now responded to whether or not China is a concern. All right? So, headline, come on, man. Joe Biden scoffs at the threat of China. Listen to this. From Charlie Spearing. He reports that Joe Biden said this, quote, China is going to eat our lunch? Question mark. So did he get a question? Former Vice President Joe Biden dismissed the threat from China. Okay. He said, China's going to eat our lunch? Question mark. Come on, man. Come on, man. We're talking about practice. Quote, they can't even figure out how to deal with the fact that they have this great division between the China Sea and the mountains in the east, in the west. They can't figure out how they're going to deal with the corruption that exists within the system. They're not bad folks, but guess what? They're not competition for us. Biden's remarks echo similar speeches he's delivered in his career about the strength of the American ideal and the economic and educational power of the United States that ultimately would beat foreign countries in Asia. Listen to me, Asia. Listen, I sound like Joe Biden. All right, so, it's funny. 11 hours ago, you know what story just broke? 11 hours ago. Ex-CIA officer pleads guilty to conspiring to spy for China. CNBC, Joe, throw this up there. CNBC, ex-CIA officer pleads guilty to conspiring to spy with China. I just saw this. I saw this because I was Googling an older article I'm going to bring you here in just a minute. A former CIA officer has pleaded guilty to conspiring to pass U.S. defense and intelligence secrets to China. Jerry Chung Shing Lee. Wonder why he would have a name that sounds like that. Was approached in 2010 by 2 Chinese intelligence officers who offered to pay him $100,000 and to take care of him for life for information he had acquired as a CIA officer, according to a Justice Department statement. The statement said Lee had created thumb drives containing secret information about CIA activities and the location and time frame of a sensitive operation. So here we go. Hundreds of thousands of dollars were subsequently paid into Lee's personal bank account between 2010 and 2013. The statement said Lee had created thumb drives. An FBI search in 2012 of a Honolulu hotel room registered to Lee also discovered handwritten notes by him about his work as a CIA officer before 2004. Quote, these notes included, among other things, intelligence provided by CIA assets, true names of assets, operational meeting locations, and phone numbers and information about covert facilities. U.S. Assistant Attorney General for National Security John Demers said it was the third case in less than a year in which a former U.S. intelligence officer had pleaded guilty or been found guilty of conspiring to pass defense secrets to China. Now, on that standard, Bill Clinton should be in jail, right? Because of the airplane technology, remember? Or was it missile technology? I think it was both. By that standard, yeah, it was Bill Clinton is a little hot under the collar. We're going to start arresting. Remember, you have Dianne Feinstein that had a Chinese spy working for her for 2 decades and didn't even know it. Well, she says she didn't know it. Here's the thing. I think Dianne Feinstein is a Chinese agent. You're not supposed to say that, but that's what I think. Just go look at her background in California. You can actually chart a local Chinese mayor's rise to power and Dianne Feinstein's rise to power. And they met in California, and they made deals together, and they both rose in the ranks to the highest levels of their respective governments. Telephone number 870-275-9799. So, yeah, back to this. Come on, man. Come on. China's going to eat our lunch? Oh, come on, man. Again, the question remains from yesterday. Why would anybody want to, number one, ignore the threat of China? Here's this other article. U.S. intelligence chiefs warn senators that China continues to grow as a security threat. January 29th of this year. This was also on the heels where the CIA and the FBI says they have ongoing investigations in all 50 states into Chinese theft of intellectual property or Chinese a spine of some kind. You have the CIA echoing the same thing, that this is a big deal. They want to supplant the U.S. They've got a 100-year plan. Listen, I mean, that's not to say that there's not some way to resolve this situation. Of course there is, but the Chinese have a lot of money, and yet they're somehow a developing nation. Under the World Trade Organization, they're considered a developing nation. What other developing nation do you know that can come into a state like Arkansas where Governor Hutchinson and others welcome them and say, we'll give you money, and they've got money to build a factory? I mean, what developing nation do you know that goes into the greatest country, the first world countries, and makes business deals? And like, what developing country do you know that does that? They're not a developing nation if they take advantage of this World Trade Organization designation. Now, I'm not saying they don't have legitimate beef with the United States. We've got a Federal Reserve note that's essentially the equivalent of gold, and we can just print more of them anytime we want. I think that may explain why China manipulates their currency so much. It's just a hunch. I actually have never actually read that anywhere, but it's just a hunch that they got a problem with the dollar and, it being this thing that we mismanage with our own financial fiscal problems. They see that as a form of oppression. So they're like, well, we'll just mess with our currency then. If you can, if you can just print more of the thing you tell the rest of the world that we all have to have for our currency to have value. That's just a thought. But anyway, the point is, they are a threat. There's no reason why a state like Arkansas should be doing business with the communist Chinese, giving them our tax dollars to come here, allowing them to take our natural resources and make a profit and send the profits back home. Not to mention, when the Chinese companies get here, they're now essentially little mini embassies. They're not companies in terms of they're not private. They are government-owned communist companies. They are not private. When push comes to shove, folks, listen, I don't know the specific law, but you guys know how China works, right? Just like any totalitarian regime works, right? If you do not cooperate, you face the death penalty at some point in the near future. We all know this of totalitarian regimes. So when push comes to shove, you think the heads of these companies, you think they're gonna, oh no, they're gonna give their government, they're working for their government. They're essentially, the nicest way to put it would be diplomats. That's the nicest way to put it. But the fact that our intellectual property is being we've got all this corporate espionage going on. It doesn't make any sense. So then the question would be, in light of Joe Biden being paid by the Chinese or indirectly his sons, and in light of the Ukrainian situation, in light of all the corruption that's out there, getting money Beau Biden specifically, the son of Vice President Joe Biden, getting all of this money from the Chinese through a loophole. We should be asking the question, is that loophole being exploited anywhere else? And the answer, if you go read Peter Schweitzer's book, it's not just Biden, but you have American politicians whose family members can be paid. And I'm talking American politicians at all levels of government whose family members can be paid by the Chinese, and it's perfectly legal. So why is Arkansas so hell-bent on doing business with the communist Chinese? You tell me. 870-275-9799. We'll be back in just a moment.
And by then, I fear that we will have lost the opportunity to address that issue like we have on some of the other issues involving the moral shift in our culture. And so I found a note that I'd written to myself just the other day, but it was written in 2009. And I said, we need to pass a law now that requires men to use the men's restroom and women to use the women's.
Wow.
And I remember at the time, I thought, they're going to think I'm an idiot out here trying to pass a law regarding something that people say would be so far out of reason that nobody would even need a law to do such a thing. And now here we are 10 years later, and we can't even get one introduced. And so that's what I'm seeing happen. I think people need to understand that these lawmakers get elected, and they ride in on votes from Tea Party type people, school choice proponents.
Bob Maloney here with a developing story from ASA News The Parrot. China is coming to Arkansas. We go live to the press conference where the Communist Chinese executive is addressing Arkansans for the first time. Let's listen into the translator.
On behalf of the government of the People's Republic of China, we invite you to come and visit the newest named city in Arkansas, China, Delphia. We are very pleased to own an American city. Our communist government is proud to do business with the mediocre state of Arkansas. We are happy to take your money and your trees and send the profits back home. The Communist government of China was pleased to learn the taxpayers of Arkansas are excited to contribute their money with the hope, if you build it, one day jobs will come. We are excited to take your fields of capitalism and turn them into fields of communism, where every Arkansan has nightly dreams of Mao. China is looking forward to our investment of $1 billion in what is now called Arkansas. We see this as an investment in our future, and that future will be called New Beijing. Chinese investment will make Arkansas a great place for jobs as the People's Republic of China will succeed where the Soviets failed. As we build our roots deep in Arkansas, we are thrilled with the potential new ideas and advancement we will share with our people back home. Soon we will have the world's largest runway in the South China Sea, and we thank Arkansas for contributing to our noble cause. In closing, once we make China great again, all of you will see the glory of the revolution of Mao. And Arkansas, whatever you do, please never call the FBI.
Paul Harrell, Parrot. Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, welcome back to the program. If you're just joining us, last hour we talked a lot about what happened on Capitol Hill yesterday. They argued over a summary report and a letter from Mueller, and they're trying to say Bill Barr lied. I mentioned this last hour, but they never ever let Bill Barr explain why he didn't lie when he was asked at a previous congressional meeting. As to the conclusions, does Mueller disagree with you? There are two conclusions, the bottom line conclusions. The first one in the summary is that there's, no collusion, that no American colluded with any Russian at all. And the second one is to the question of obstruction, where William Barr said no obstruction because we're not going to charge him with obstruction. That second one, from what I can tell, is what the letter's about. But the letter, we don't even think is from Bob Mueller in the first place. It's signed Bob Mueller, but it's actually from a staffer. The telephone call that the Washington Post reported on and that Bill Barr testified to yesterday was that, Mueller was kind of upset with the way the media was covering his summary. But all of this is irrelevant because you have a 400-page report. It gives you all the information that you're going to need. And the Democrats know that it's a big nothing burger. And so what do? They grandstand. They act like somehow that this Russian collusion conspiracy theory still has life in it. And they're not going to let it go. And this is going to continue for a very long time. And the mainstream media is going to continue reporting absolute bogus lies. Like they did when they cut in. Brian Williams cut into Lindsey Graham's opening statement to say, by the way, collusion, it's not really a thing. That's not something. When he says that there's no collusion found, you can't really say that because collusion's not anywhere in the U.S. Code. You guys just spent the last 2 years. They spent the last 2 years every day, possible collusion between Trump and Russia. Did the Trump campaign collude with the Russians? That's your word that's being used. Don't get upset when Lindsey Graham's using the same word that you've deceived the American people with for 2 years. What a bunch of nonsense. So dishonest. And then Kamala Harris. Can we play this one real quick before we got State Representative Nelda Speaks? I want to revisit this clip. Kamala Extract Harris, high on Kamala Extract, saying this about Rod Rosenstein. What a flip-flop this is. Listen to this.
Earlier today, in response to Senator Graham, you said, quote, that you consulted with Rosenstein constantly, unquote, with respect to the special counsel's investigation and report. But Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein is also a key witness in the firing of FBI Director Comey. Did you consult with I'm not finished. Yeah. Did you consult with DOJ ethics officials before you enlisted Rod Rosenstein to participate in a charging decision for an investigation, the subject of which he is also a witness?
My understanding was that he had been cleared already to participate in it by the.
So you had consulted with them and they cleared it?
No, I think they cleared it when he took over the investigation.
Did you consult?
My understanding.
You don't know whether he's been cleared of a conflict of interest?
He would be participating if there was a conflict of interest.
So you're saying that it did not need to be reviewed by the career ethics officials in your office? I believe it was appropriate?
Well, I believe it was reviewed, and I
what
would also point out this seems to be a bit of a flip-flop because when the president's supporters were challenging
flip-flop, I think,
Rosenstein,
in this case is that you're not answering the question directly.
No.
Did the ethics officials
What a bunch of
in your office, in the Department of Justice, review the appropriateness of Rod Rosenstein being a part of making a charging decision on an investigation which he is also a witness in?
Yeah, so as I said, my understanding was he had been cleared, and he had been cleared before I arrived.
In making a decision on the Mueller report?
Yes.
And the findings of whether or not the case would be charged on obstruction of justice? He had been cleared on that?
He was the acting attorney general on the Mueller investigation.
Had he been cleared
He had been,
to make,
I am,
by your side, a decision?
I am informed that before I arrived, he had been cleared by the ethics officials.
Of what?
Serving as acting attorney general on the Mueller case.
How about making a charging decision on obstruction of justice?
That is
the
what the
underlying
acting
offenses, which include him as a witness.
You know, that's what the acting attorney general's job is.
To be a witness and to make the decision about being a prosecutor.
Listen, so now they are saying, the Democrats are saying, Kamala Harris, by the way, getting a lot of accolades in terms of the liberal press. Matter of fact, if you Google Kamala Harris, Rod Rosenstein right now, you get these headlines like, watch Kamala Harris make William Barr look like a bumbling fool and all this other nonsense. You won't let him speak, but she's running for president, so she did all that but the fact of the matter is, if the Democrats are now saying that Rod Rosenstein isn't credible, we don't have a mainstream media that's going to point out that they used to love Rod Rosenstein. Just Google Rod Rosenstein red line, and you'll find they better not fire Rosenstein. He's the gatekeeper. He's got integrity. And now all of a sudden we hear, well, he ran the investigation, but he shouldn't have been able to decide or confer with the Attorney General on whether or not charges should be filed against Trump. What? So amazing. We live in interesting times, and truth is very, very hard. Truth right now, well, truth is truth, but I mean, it's like Jell-O, trying to nail Jell-O to the wall. Back in a minute.
Regularly dedicated Christians, they ride in on their votes, and then when they get to the Capitol, unfortunately, the influencers take over, and that would be the governor, the state agency heads, the education lobby, the business lobby, the other lobbies that are out there for devices like casinos and, marijuana and so forth. And so once they get to the Capitol, a lot of times lawmakers lose their bearings because they lose touch with the people who sent them there, and that's unfortunate.
Again, we're talking with Jerry Cox, president of the Family Council. What about the corporate influence? Because just in my recent memory, if you go back all the way to 2015 even, it does seem that some of these issues that might deal with trying to combat the culture shift, this idea that the LGBTQ is the new civil rights movement, that doesn't set too well with some of the very influential corporations in this state, like Walmart. Meaning they're located here, they're based here, it's their world headquarters, and they don't want national media attention. I mean, does that have a bearing on some of this as well?
Oh, I think it does. Yeah, the influence of corporate America, and specifically Walmart and these other big companies on our Arkansas legislature, is huge. And I believe that these corporations are the ones who have largely put pressure on the governor and others in leadership to see to it that the conscience protection legislation and the other laws that we've tried to pass don't see the light of day if it would draw media attention as being somehow anti-gay, anti-transgender, and not progressive. I think there is this idea that if Arkansas will embrace the values of the far coasts of the country, California, Massachusetts, New York, that somehow we're going to be cool and we're going to be a desirable place to live. Well, people live in Arkansas instead of California because they like the values here. They like the kind of environment that we have as far as social issues and so forth. And I think there is this wrong thinking that somehow we have to become like the far edges of the country in order to get somewhere. And I think we ought to just be good at who we are, which is middle America. We're mom, apple pie. We're God and country and gun ownership and Second Amendment rights and all those things. If we'll embrace that, I think we'll be great.
I think you're exactly right. Hey, Jerry, right now, I know right now Conduit for Commerce is in the middle of working on their legislative scorecard. That's going to be out sometime this summer. Do you have, does Family Council, I know you guys do a scorecard as well. Are you working on that?
We are.
All right, folks, welcome back to the program. Thank you so much for being with us. We're in the process of getting State Representative Nelda Speaks on the line. We're hoping that our phone systems, they appear to be malfunctioning in some way, but hopefully we're going to get those working. Very strange occurrence. You know, there were three bills. I think three big bills that raised taxes on the people of Arkansas, and that's what we're going to talk about. SB 576 was the to reform the tax laws concerning the levy on collection of sales and use tax. This was internet sales tax. Do we have Nelda on the line? Okay, let's.
Yes, you do.
Hello, State Representative Nelda Speaks. Thanks so much for coming on the program this morning.
Thank you for asking me, Paul.
Now, you are from District 100. Remind our viewers across the state and listeners where that is.
That is the upper portion of Baxter County. It takes in Mountain Home to Lakeview, and then to the Gamelia, Henderson, back over in there.
All right. Well, so let's just get right to it. I'm going to give you the floor. Generally, State Representative Nelda Speaks, what was your impression of the session?
Well, I thought we passed a lot of taxes this time on our people, our citizens, and I think there was some things that got done that was great, but just did seem like a session that there was a lot of taxes that were passed out.
Well, you know, it's interesting that you mentioned that, Nelda, because you actually voted no on, I think, the three big ones. You voted no against the internet tax. You voted no against the half-cent sales tax that's set to expire. They're putting it back on the ballot to make sure we don't want, make sure, do you really want it to sunset? And then you voted against the gas tax increase. So, I really appreciate you. Let me ask you this, Nelda. How did you stand up? How did you vote no on all three of those big tax increase bills when the establishment, had arguments out there trying to get Republicans to support it? And, in fact, were successful. They got enough to support
it. Paul, it really, when I make my mind up and you look at all of these things, I don't care what the establishment wants. I don't care what other people want. I do try very hard to support my citizens that put me in office, and I knew that Baxter County is a very conservative county, and they did not want this. I know we need highway tax. I'm not highway tax. I don't mean that. We need highway money. But I feel like, Paul, we do not reach out and find places within our revenues and lower other things in order to do it. And until they do some of those things, I cannot support another tax.
And I think most of the people listening to this right now really appreciate that, and they really appreciate that mentality. And I wish more of the politicians down there had that mentality. This is how long have you been serving as a state representative, Nelda?
This is my third term. 2.5 years? 4.5 years. We're into our third term and 2-year terms. So I'm just, I'm very conservative, Paul, and I just feel like that we are putting such a load on our citizens, especially our middle income people that work so hard, and they have families they're trying to support, and it's just, my heart goes out to them. We've all been there.
So how does this past session compare to the other two that you've been a part of so far?
I actually thought this was one of our hardest sessions. I know every year, every time we go into session, there are some things that they start shoving at us. And but this one here, it drug out all through the session of just big things like the highway tax, the internet tax, and we have a big cigarette tax that got put on the citizens.
Yes.
Which I don't smoke, but I feel like every time we reach out, we look for a sin tax that we can tax more on them, and I think we're taxing our citizens to the point that it's such a load on them.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to find out, if you take into consideration, Paul, all of the taxes that just we keep putting on our citizens, and how much out of a dollar bill do they actually get to bring home?
Oh, it's quite a bit. I mean, when you add up the federal and state and local, I mean, it's probably 50%, if not more.
I figured it's at least 60%, but I have not been able to get that answer.
Yeah. Well,
but that's...
You're right. We're talking with State Representative Nelda Speaks. You're right. I think that in Arkansas specifically, we're at a breaking point. We have one of the highest sales taxes in the nation. We've got one of the we were number 17th on the list of worst places to live when it comes to the tax code. We're 44th in income in the United States, and so we've got a lot of work that we can do. Nelda, feel free to talk about some of the good things that happened, in terms of the social issues. But I'd like to ask you this. Do you think it's apparent, based on the tax increases, that we have a lot more consensus on the social issues, but we don't have that same consensus on economic freedom issues and smaller government issues?
I think that's what's happening, since that's the one thing I guess I've been more surprised in when I came into office. You begin to see a lot of that even in your county government, that's where I came from. And you see that people really, Republicans, we'll talk about them, because I am a Republican, that we stand for, it's easy for us to stand up here on the social part. And we're for guns, we are against abortions, we're against gay rights, we're against those things. But then when you come to the fiscal part, it just doesn't seem to bother that we step up here and we'll vote for any tax that they throw at us. And I don't know, can't seem to stand up against the establishment. They don't seem to understand what in the long haul we are doing to our citizens.
Well, there are people like you, Nelda, who seem to have it figured out. Why can't there just be more Nelda Speaks in the Arkansas General Assembly?
Well, I don't know. I don't know what causes it.
Yeah, that's a terrible question. I'll take that one back. But you know what I mean. That's just.
I know. You don't bother me, Paul.
But yeah. I mean, it just. I'm glad that. Well, let me ask you this. I've been asking everybody this, and I think I already know the answer based on, immediately where you went in this interview. But the bottom line is this: the people of Arkansas were giving X amount of money to the government before the 92nd General Assembly, and after the 92nd General Assembly, we're going to be giving more to the government. Do you agree with that?
I do. I agree very much. The one thing that really bothers me about the highway, I feel like, yes, we have asked, we passed a law that the highway departments will have to start stepping up and telling us, giving us some things where they're going to use money on. But it's almost like we give these just a blank check to people, and we do not know where they're going to spend it. What roads they're going to fix, what highways they're going to work on, and I think we need to hear. We need to know before you start doing that.
Yeah.
But on the other side of this thing, we passed, 2 years ago, the tax on the tires.
Yes.
Which was to bring $1 million in. That went into just our regular income to be used for just the regular things. And why didn't that go for the highways?
Yeah.
I mean, there's $1 million right there. And so we don't look for places that should be going to your highways. And we drive back and forth from Little Rock to Mountain Home, and the roads are terrible. I will agree, they are. And I know we are a small state, but we just can't keep loading our citizens on the backs of them more and more, taking away from them. You're going to have to start cutting expenditures and look from inside.
Yeah, cut spending. I agree. Oh, and by the way, that road from Little Rock to Mountain Home is one of my favorite drives to make because it is so much fun. You know, you have to pay attention. You gotta be alert, alive, alert, awake, and enthusiastic to make that drive. So Nelda speaks. Let me ask you about what happened towards the end of the session. Towards the end of the session, like right before you guys were scheduled to recess and basically end it all, a federal judge says, hey, Arkansas work requirements are illegal, and they basically, you know, they end the internet portal where you report your work requirements and everything else, and there seemed to be, at least for maybe a day or so, some expression by the House saying maybe we need to wait, pause, get some assurances, and then, of course, the budget was approved. So what were your thoughts when all that happened?
At first I thought that maybe we woke up to some things. I've never felt like they really forced people to work. I thought that was just a thing that's thrown out there that sounds good. But for them to actually have to go to work, those that able-bodied people that's getting all of the entitlements, that they actually may have to go to work. And then here comes from the federal judge, and you know, they've been throwing this up for some time that you can't force people to work. And so then when they started in, well, they wasn't going to vote for this, and they started pushing back. And then you begin to see that it looked good, sounded good, but in the end, they're going to do it. They're not going to take the stand and force the hand of I call it the Obamacare, and we've kicked that can down the road, Paul, right now to where we're beginning to see that we can't afford it. What we've been saying all along ever since I've been down there, that our state cannot sustain this thing.
Is that why we're raising taxes on the people?
Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm.
It is. What is it? $60 billion that we're having to fund right now, on and above what we've been funding?
Well, yeah, I think 50. It was originally 3 years ago. Our share was projected to be, I think, 53 million, and this year our share is 138. So it's, I mean, and that was from the governor's office. That was his estimate. It'd be 53 million this year, and instead it's 138 million. So, and you know, it's a $2 billion a year program, but you know, we're going to have to pay more and more and more. And you know, if you start to look at, you know, we had to come up with $138 million, and you know, then they cut the income tax by $95 million in the next 2 years sometime. These tax increases, though, like the gas tax, starts in October. The internet sales tax starts collecting in July. So they're certainly, and that's why in the first couple of fiscal years here, you do have these massive tax increases on the people. Practically speaking. And, you know, Nelda, from what I can tell, because I know there's going to be other people that say, no, it was, you know, it's actually, you know, tax cuts. But the fact of the matter is, nobody's going to care what the fiscal impact is in year 3, because another legislature is going to meet and they can undo everything that was done. And by the way, in fiscal year 3, it's by DFA's own numbers, we're still looking, at more burdens on the people, from what I can tell, according to the numbers. So anyway, it's from a conservative economic standpoint, a fiscal conservative standpoint, it's very frustrating right now for us.
Sure it is. And should be. I mean, when I look down here listing all the taxes that I know that we did do, and we're not even talking about the fees and fines and all of that, that's also got put on the citizens. Yes, we've cut over here, but on the other hand, we have raised, so I don't think they're balancing out at all when you look at everything. And when these all go into, it's a shell game.
Yes. Yeah. No, they're not. They're not balancing out. Matter of fact, just got a text message from somebody who was curious exactly what the numbers are. We're actually asking the audience, what do you think the number is going to be? Exactly how much do you think the increase is going to be when it's all said and done for the first fiscal year, second fiscal year? State Representative Nelda Speaks, it's always great to have you on, and I really appreciate you being honest with us and just speaking the truth, the reality of the situation. I appreciate your votes against those tax increases. I know the people of your district, as well as the people of Arkansas, do as well, and you're a happy warrior, and just by talking to you, you can tell that you are, and yet you still stick to your principles, and I'm so thankful for that.
Thank you so much, Paul. I appreciate that.
All right.
And it's always nice to hear from the citizens while we're in session, encouraging us not to do some of these things, and it's enjoyable to serve the citizens.
Nelda Speaks, thank you so much for coming on. Have a great week.
You too, Paul. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Bye-bye.
Anytime. Folks, we're going to take a break. Going to be back here in just a moment.
Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
In fact, just a slight change of wording there. What we are working on is a report card, and they're all pretty much the same. I concede that, but here's what we try to emphasize: hey, we didn't give anybody a grade. We didn't give any lawmaker a grade. What we did was we took the issues that we worked on at the legislature and we cared about, and we scored whether or not they agreed with us or they didn't. And then we give everybody a grade fairly. It's not a matter of, well, we like Senator A, and so we're going to give him a higher score than Senator B. It's just how they voted. And in fact, Paul, you may remember last time around we had Republicans that made Fs, and we had Democrats who made A's because of how they voted. And so if
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
I just got to look at the numbers here. I mean, you've got a you've got an internet sales tax. According to DFA's numbers, it's going to bring in $43.8 million. You've got a cigarette paper tax increase, raising the smoking age to 21, removing the border exemption pricing. Well, that's supposed to bring in, $720,000 to the Arkansas government. You've got a gas tax increase. And this is according to the fiscal year 2020. So in the first fiscal year, these numbers, and the gas tax increase is going to bring in another $57.5 million. Let's see. Then you have the extension of the half-cent sales tax. Well, we won't know about that until the vote comes out. But if the people vote for the extension of the half-cent sales tax, that's a $293 million tax increase on the people of Arkansas. Then you have income tax cuts, which is a decrease in the first fiscal year of $25.6 million. Then you got the homestead property tax credit rating. Also, they rated the property tax relief trust fund in that. That's going to be a hit on the budget of $12.5 million. Okay, so you have that, again, in first fiscal year. Then you have the increased cell phone fees, which is $10.1 million more from the people to the government. Then you have the raising of the water bill, which was another $1 million from the people to the government. And so, what do you think the number's going to be? What about the second fiscal year? What about 2021? Well, in 2021, it's going to be an increase to the state of Arkansas government based on the internet sales tax of $39.7 million. Now, remember, the internet sales tax also had the corporate tax reform. So, but the corporate tax reform is a phase-in, right? The internet sales tax is collected immediately starting in July. You got another $630,000 going from the people to the government in fiscal year 2021 because of the cigarette paper tax increase. Then the gas tax increase in fiscal year 2021, $86 million more from the people to the government. Now, the income tax kick in a little bit more in fiscal year 2021, going from $25 million hit to the government budget, meaning we get to keep more of our money, to $74 million in fiscal year 2021. So that's good. Same amount with the property tax, basically $12.8 million hit to the budget, meaning more money to us on these specific issues. But then the increased cell phone bill, again, is another $10 million in fiscal year 2021 from the people to the government. And then water bill fee increase, tax increase, another $1 million. So you guys just do the math out there and figure it out. These are the Department of Finance and Administration's own numbers. This is not numbers just pulled out of the air. These are their own numbers, folks. You be the judge. Here's another question. We've been asking our audience, what are the numbers? What do you think the number's going to be? Well, here's another question for you. Whose number are you going to believe? Because we all know that there's going to be people out there, others, who are going to show different numbers because they're going to want to push a narrative that they have stuck to the Republican Party platform of lower taxes, and they're going to want to make sure that their task force was a success, or is at least shown as a success. They're going to want to make sure that they actually decreased, that they're going to want to show that they decreased the tax burden on the people of Arkansas. But according to what they did in the 92nd General Assembly, You look at these fiscal year 2020, 2021, 2022, it's not the case. And folks, if that half-cent sales tax passes and they don't let it sunset, you're talking about a massive tax increase that by statute right now is scheduled to go down. We will see you tomorrow for Johnny Cash Friday. I got some new Johnny Cash songs I'm going to try out tomorrow. Thanks for listening, Arkansas. Be safe.